Hello duck people, this is the ultimate guide of how to enter the federal duck stamp. I'm Kira Sabin. I've been entering for 7 years now. I first entered in 2019 when I was 19, and I see myself entering forevermore. As a teen, I would have appreciated a video like this to have existed, and I know it can be pretty intimidating if you are not in the art world even and want to enter this competition. Just so you know, the duck stamp is a cute and fun nickname for it. It is actually called the Migratory Bird Hunting and Conservation Stamp, which is quite a mouthful. This is not a postage stamp. It's entirely its own thing. It is technically a physical stamp, though. It is essentially a permit. Every hunter is required to buy them, and conservationists and art enthusiasts alike also buy them. It is a single $25 stamp. You can get it on a souvenir sheet that many people collect, and it will get you into any national wildlife refuge for free. I want more just normal people to purchase a duck stamp. You can get them at the post office. They don't always have them. You can buy them online. I forgot to say the most important reason for supporting this stamp and entering is because it raises $40 million each year to protect and preserve wetlands. So let's get into how do you enter the competition to get your artwork on said stamp. So the first thing you want to do is find the rules for each year. They are new every year, even though what's in them barely ever changes. And there's not a specific date that the new rules become available. You kind of just have to watch. But it's safe to say you can largely base it on the previous year's rules. You find these at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service website. They have a duck stamp tab. Also, any duck stamp resources that you could possibly think of, I have a link on my personal website too, which I always keep in my bio in my link tree. So if you're like, how do I find this duck thing? Go to my link tree and you'll probably find it. I want information to be accessible. On the rules, they have the winner from last year always. And then in big letters here, dear artist, please read all of the enclosed information very carefully and follow the instructions. If you do not follow the instructions completely, your entry may be disqualified from the contest. And then they say all entries must be postmarked by midnight August 15th, 2026. That date has never changed in the 7 years that I've entered, and I don't see it happening. I have read all of this several times throughout the years, and I'm gonna make it easier to digest. So let's start with page 1. You must be a US citizen and 18 years old to enter this contest. There is a junior duck stamp competition, which I will talk briefly about at the end. They explain why they have the contest. They convince you why you should do it even though you don't win anything of monetary value. There's no prize for this competition. You do get a signed pane of your stamp, which is really cool. I mean, it's huge. Winning this is still huge for a wildlife career in general, but really it's to do it for the fun of it, for the love of the ducks, for the love of the art. You have to make a 2-dimensional design that is handmade by you, and the basic rule brick for this competition requires 3 sets of knowledge, which is basic waterfowl biology. So you make sure the bird looks right and where it lives and its plumage and that season that it is in. You have a general understanding of artistic composition. It has to look good. And then what's super unique about this competition is that you have to know that your painting is going to be reduced to about this size. It's tiny, so it has to be able to be really readable at that size. So on this page, you can find what are the eligible species. There are 5 eligible species each year. Here they are. This year, cackling goose, blue-winged teal, mottled duck, long-tailed duck, and king eider. On the second page, there's a list of every species that they choose from, if you want to take a look at that. Duck stamp does include geese and swans because they are in the same genetic family. So if you have like a generic question, this is a great place to go. It's reminding you of everything. I will go into more depth on all of this, but just know you cannot have any writing of any kind, no letters on your painting, or it will be disqualified. You do have to sign a reproduction and rights agreement, and you do have to pay a non-refundable $125 to enter this contest. That is used to fund the program and the judging. And then they do a brief overview of what the painting will look like, which we will go over. On the second page, we have the technical requirements for designing and submission of entry. A lot of the second page is kind of just an index of what they're going to talk about. So the painting that you're going to end up making is 7 by 10 inches, real little. All right, I have this special box. I think it's like $80 or something ridiculous. Sienna plein air box. that opens. I have this because I inevitably travel with my painting every year. It's exactly the right size for my painting, and I live in like the dustiest house ever. So if I don't cover my painting at night, it will have so much dust in it at some point. But inside that box, I have the starting painting that I ended up abandoning from last year, and I will use this as an example. So this is what you're gonna make. This is the size of it. It will have a mat over this. But this is the goal. Horizontal, not vertical. Must be horizontal. What you can show on this must be a live bird. You cannot have the main bird be a dead bird, which sounds like an absurd rule, but a dead bird did win once. By Maynard Reese, this is the only one that features a dead bird and has a hunting dog on it. Kind of an iconic stamp now because of it. But I do think that is what inspired the rule that the main bird in focus must be alive. So I think you can have a dead duck, just can't be the main one. I don't know. Dead duck doesn't go over well. I wouldn't pick that route. You can have more than one of the eligible species in them. Sometimes those ducks do hang out together, but don't put ducks that don't hang out together because that is not a good understanding of biology. And you can have multiple ducks in general in the painting, but the main bird must be an eligible species. No scroll work, lettering, do not sign the painting. Bird tags like a band on their leg can't have any letters on it. And at the end, you'll be matting this. We'll go over that. And then, bottom of the second page, this little few sentences has struck quite a lot of controversy, actually. It says, the entry design may not be copied or duplicated from previously published art, including photographs, or from images in any format published on the internet. So that line to me is essentially, do not copy other people's work, whether it be art or photography. You cannot plagiarize, you cannot steal an image off the internet and use it as your inspiration, because photography is a form of art and the photographer has a copyright of that image. A lot of other people say that this means that you can't show your entry online specifically, because then your image is a published image on the internet, which this is an anonymous competition, or as anonymous as you can get. And by posting that online, it directly violates that phrase. I do not interpret it that way because of this. When you continue reading, it says, an entry submitted in a prior contest that was not selected for a federal or state stamp design may be submitted in the current contest if the entry meets the criteria set forth in this section. That means that you can submit a work, it doesn't do well, submit it again following years, and it could totally win. That did happen with Bob Hopman's painting. He reworked essentially the same design and it won. And that was totally fine, even though his previous painting had been published on the internet and people knew what it looked like. And they upload an image of every entry on the internet in a Flickr gallery. Sorry, I'm getting kind of in the nitty-gritty of it. I will say, if you specifically want to show your image on the internet before the contest, some people will not be a fan of that. I've obviously been doing it and I have not broken any rules according to the people who actually make this competition happen. So I do that. But some people really don't like that. But it is not technically a rule anywhere that you cannot post your image on social media on the internet before the competition. In the end, is this a completely anonymous competition? No. I correctly identified 11 entries last year just by looking. All right. But once you decide what you're doing, now you need to know how to make the painting. Often the first step in planning a painting is reference photos or knowing what you are going to paint. So once you have decided on the species that you want to paint out of the 5 eligible species, you have to get a photo to look at or a piece of taxidermy to look at. Generally something to look at, because none of us are just pulling these realistic ducks out of our is we are learning from biology, from the species, from photos, and then depicting it. And as stated for this contest, you can't use ones that are online unless you have permission to use ones that are online. So let's go over the options. 1, you take your own photo references. This was a big deal to me. I wanted to be able to do that. So one year, 2022, I had a really good year and I bought this magnificent lens and a camera for the first time. These things are not cheap. cheap at all. I walked into a camera shop and I came out $3,444 later with a setup. I bought this used lens and I bought a new mirrorless Canon camera. You do not need as fancy equipment as this to get your own photo references. Your phone can work fine, but often ducks are really far away from us, and that's what makes it difficult. So there are certainly cheaper camera options, and you could buy just like the cheapest version of a zoom lens is probably alright. Otherwise, even binoculars that are pretty good, and then you hold your phone camera up to the binoculars just right, you can get a decent picture that way too. So getting your own photos is always the best way to do this, the easiest way to do this, but not the most money-friendly way to do it. Not to mention, not all the ducks live by you. I haven't seen many of the species that are eligible. So if that's the case, you got no ducks by you, you got no way to take their photo. You can't sit down and paint it live. Then you go to the internet. So one way to do this is you learn from photos on the internet and you make your own adjustments to them to create a new image. We're gonna look at a painting I did of mallards recently. We're gonna look at the hen. So these are some photos that I was looking at when I was painting my hen. I liked several aspects of them, but I wasn't gonna copy directly a single image. So I liked the rump, the rear a lot on this one. I liked the head position on this one. I looked at several different pictures for the tone of her bill / just kind of made it up to see what fits the painting well. I looked at lighting in multiple different images and I created this painting in the end. It's kind of like a Frankenstein version of using photos and learning from them. That is a valid option of how to make a duck stamp. However, the more pictures you use, the better it is, but the harder it gets. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to paint realistically when you don't have a single image that you're looking at. But that is totally fine and acceptable way to go about it. But if you too heavily use the influence of a single image and someone is able to recognize that, you will be disqualified from the competition. That doesn't happen often, but it is a possibility. And even more so for the junior competition, older juniors are required to submit the images that they use as references. If you're not relying too heavily on a single image, I think you should be just fine. But it's hard. If you don't want to go that route, now we go to getting the rights to use an image. My computer sounds like it's going to crash and burn, but alas. Alright, this is how you get permission to use an image. There are sites like Pexels. This site has free images, no copyright. You can use them however you want. Great, but they're not going to have everything that you need. So say search ducks. They got some great pictures of ducks. A lot of mallards. They got common ducks like the wood ducks. They have a decent amount of common ducks. You are free to use those. Sites like this, if a lot of people use those, it will become evident in paintings, which will affect you negatively. But the odds of everyone choosing the same reference photo is pretty slim and not a ton of people enter. So that's a fine option. There are certainly some other websites like this, but I'm not entirely sure of them. The shortcomings of Pexel specifically is they don't have every duck. Say you type in a king eider, which is one of the eligible species this year, they have none. These are common eiders. None at all. Long-tailed duck, nothing. That's a booty. No. So, but they do have advertisements of iStock, the elusive iStock. And you go there, iStock has fantastic photos, a bajillion photos by many different photographers of probably any species that you want to look up. Probably not a ton of every species, but every species, I'm sure there's at least some photos on iStock. But this is not free to use. These are taken by photographers who expect to be compensated for their images, which is great. So let me briefly explain how this works. You can purchase the right to use this image, but it gets complicated, especially as I don't want to use this literal image. I want to look at it and then create my own work from it. Legally, there's some slight gray areas that are hard to navigate, but this is what I've learned from being in exactly the same predicament as people over the years. So iStock specifically has a credit system, and most images are 1 credit for a standard license. To buy 1 credit, it's about $13. Sometimes they are like have sales and it's like $11 or something like that. It's essentially $13 to buy the right to this image. And you can use that image like on the internet or printed or however you want to use it as a way to make paintings. It becomes an issue though when you want to resell this image. You don't have the right to resell this image for monetary value for a profit with a standard license. But then you're like, but I'm not selling this image. I'm selling a painting I did looking at the image. Well, if the image that you are looking at is very largely influenced in the art that you make, if that image that you bought is the main reason and the main depiction in your painting, it's gonna be an issue. You don't have the right to sell it. It's kind of weird, and honestly, if it really went to court or something like that, I don't know how it's gonna turn out. But according to online, you don't have the right to sell it. So if you want a reference photo online just to make a drawing, you can buy it with that $13 one credit, and that's totally fine. But say you want to enter it in the federal duck stamp competition and it wins. Say it wins and you don't have a license to sell it. That's not great because it gets kind of weird. The winning work is basically expected to make and sell prints of it. That is how anyone who wins this competition earns money. So to not run into any of these issues, you would have to buy an extended license, which unfortunately is very expensive. It's now not one credit, it's 36 or 38 credits, which ends up being over $300. So if you want to sell prints of that image or merchandise of that image, if you want to just sell prints, it's like $100 something. But if you want to do merchandise, which a winner of a duck stamp would, / I do these things, I sell prints and merch. So if I want to use one of these images, I have to pay the $300 to do that. You see how taking my own photos is vastly less complicated. But this is a fine route to go down. If I think the amount that I can sell is worth the $300 for this image, say it was a species that's really hard to get, prime image could win me the whole thing, I could deem that as worth it and do that. For those entering, you're already paying $125 just to enter. You're probably not going to go this route, but that is an option. If you want to use an image online and buy it with one credit, the $13 standard license, and you are very confident that you are not going to win this and have no plans of selling the painting or selling prints of it, that is an okay route to go down, I would think. But if you plan to make a profit, it becomes complicated if it's someone else's image. Now, to avoid any of that, here are some other options. If you don't want to Frankenstein references online, but you want a single image, you can 1, ask a friend if they are a wildlife photographer. Obviously, you're probably not coming to me if you already have a wildlife photographer friend who can help you out. So you can ask for permission. Human to human. You can message people who are wildlife photographers and be like, hey, I'm entering this competition. Could I use your photos as references? And you tell them straight up. Some could possibly work out a deal with money involved, or some would be totally fine with just letting you do that. I've had some friends who enter this contest and have had great success finding photographers online through sites like these, I believe, contacting them and asking for permission. And they're often more than happy to be like, yeah, here's a whole folder of bird pictures I have that I'm not doing anything with. Would love to see some art made by looking at it. So it's definitely worth it to reach out to someone if that's your ideal option of looking at a photo. Alright, I forgot to introduce the one last option of reference photos now that we live in the world of AI. So, question, could you use AI to generate a reference photo? I think technically, yes. I will say, I have judged the junior competition. It was evident when that was happening. I don't want you to use AI. Please be aware, some sites, like iStock, specifically say that they don't have AI images in their gallery. Sites like Adobe Stock have a ton of AI. So much AI. So, please try to filter what is and what isn't AI. I would hate to have anyone pay for an image that is an AI image. AI, it is not perfect and it does not always get everything right about a species. I specifically like this competition because you have to mail in the physical work that you made. It's guaranteed to be handmade. And it's funny that some winners have been accused of being AI now when this is the last type of competition that could possibly allow that. I would heavily discourage using AI AI for references. Morally, and just because it's not going to be nearly as authentic as a real photo of a duck. So please don't. Let's keep AI out of the duck stamp. Man, I hope that wasn't too confusing. That felt really confusing to lay out. Essentially, if you plan to make a profit with your art based on an image, you need an extended license with the right to sell that image. If you do not plan to make a profit, you can get a standard license for cheaper. Otherwise, go online, look at as many references as you could possibly gather to make your own image, or you try to take your own photography. Essentially, do not go online, Google the duck, take an image, and paint exactly that image without permission. It is a fault of every artist at some point, probably, but for this competition, you cannot do that. And in life, you can't really do that unless you're just doing it at home for yourself or for like your family, friends, for no money involved. Credit photographers. And just saying this is taken by this person is not compensation or credit. Okay, once that nightmare is figured out, please let me know if you have any other questions, because it's certain that I could have missed something. You have your composition, your photo that you're going to look at to make your painting. Now what? Now what do you do? The 4th page of the rules is judging, which I can go over later. We're gonna skip to the format of this painting, which is the other part of this contest that is very specific and you can be disqualified for if you don't follow the rules, the guidelines. I don't know. So your image, the actual image, is 7 by 10 inches, which is inside here. I airbrush, so it's hard to tell, but inside here is the 7 by 10. The rest of it is gonna be 9 by 12, which is the outside of this whole thing. This is going to be the size of your end product. So 9 by 12 dimensions that it must be, and it cannot exceed height wise. It cannot be more than 1/4 of an inch thick. So can you do collage work? Yes, you can. Rob McBroom, excellent example of that. He has rhinestones and stuff on it. It just can't exceed the 1/4 thickness. So it can't be like protruding. It has to be 2D still. I actually do have a mat. Oh, this is the wrong size mat. This is the wrong size mat, just so you know. But you'll add a mat to it. And then this is about 1/4 inch wide. So it can't exceed that. So what they recommend and what most people do is the surface that you're going to paint on, you want it to be 9 by 12 to start, because it'll give a lot more stability. And they say use a thick masonite or foam core for your entry. I cannot imagine using foam core. I don't know. This, I believe, is masonite. This is an art board panel. That's what they're called. A gesso board. This is what I and a lot of other duck artists, duck stamp artists, buy. I specifically buy the brand Ampersand because I know of them and I like them. And they have one that is 9 by 12. So this is what I buy. Gesso board. This one is for oils and acrylics, and it has a slight texture on it. This blue one. There's a lot of different versions. Also this one, which I've used, that is a smooth finish. This like the smoothest surface you could possibly paint on. So much so that it's almost hard to paint on. It is primed with acrylic and ready to use for acrylic or oil, or it's not watercolor. Could use watercolor, but it's not made for watercolor. The first layers of paint have to dry all the way, otherwise it can kind of chip off, but this is exceptionally smooth if you want it. I recommend not that. I recommend this one though, to start out with. Now if you want to do watercolor, they do have watercolor boards online, I'm pretty sure. Otherwise, you could glue watercolor paper to one of these, but I'm pretty sure they make thick boards with watercolor surface on them. What you don't really want for stability is just a piece of paper and then matted, because these do need to be shipped across the country usually and are hung up and could kind of go through a lot. Better for stability to have some kind of backing on it. So if you do choose paper, that's fine. I just would put, well, maybe foam core or something on the back of it to make it a little bit thicker and a little bit more sturdy. All of those things perfectly acceptable though. though. I just recommend doing the 9x12. Okay, I wanted to add a little section about varnishing because I was asked about it. So at this point, you've gotten your material and you've painted or made a duck stamp. I'm sure it looks beautiful. Varnishing is a normal part of the painting process, although it's not a necessity. It's hard to say whether the majority of pieces entered in the duck stamp are varnished or not, but I would guess yes. Does varnishing your work affect you judging wise? I would think yes, a little bit, because the judges do see your work in person, and varnishing is often a good way to make all of your existing paint and work feel more cohesive at the end and make the colors a bit more vibrant. So I would recommend it. I have not varnished any of my 7 pieces that I've entered into the duck stamp, and I do think I wish I had. Hard to say if it would really affect anything, but I think I will be doing that from here on out. So for acrylics, it's quite easy. You can get a spray or a pouring type of varnish. Spray works great. They come in many different finishes like gloss or satin or matte. It's kind of personal preference. For acrylic, once your painting is done, just do a light coat of spray over it. It's also good for protecting the painting. For oil paint, it's a bit more complicated, which is why I have not done mine. In college, I learned varnish shouldn't be applied until your painting is 100% dry and cured, and usually that could take anywhere from 6 to 12 months, like an insanely long time before you put varnish on your piece. Otherwise, it could have some issues over time. So I kind of just never thought I would, but then I learned there's other types of varnishes that can be applied, and retouch varnish can be applied to oil paintings after the piece is touch dry. So that usually just takes like a couple days up to a couple weeks. And if you're not like me and procrastinate for this competition so much, you can easily varnish your piece with retouch varnish. This varnish is not meant to be permanent forever, meaning you can apply it right away, and then after that 6 to 12 months period, you can apply a finishing varnish on it, but I don't think you have to. And if you want the effects of varnish immediately after finishing a painting, this is what I would use. Just make sure that whatever you're buying is compatible with whatever you're painting with. So go online and do a little bit of research. I use water mixable oils, Winsor & Newton brand, so I need to buy retouch varnish that is suitable with that. This one specifically says that it is, so that's what I would buy. That's what I'm going to use this year. If you have a drawing or charcoal, graphite, collage work, stuff like that, I think you could also use fixative setting sprays, things like that, to polish it off and protect your work a little bit more. I would recommend them. Just know that some varnishes may appear weird when they scan the work to do the online gallery. The pieces in the scanned online gallery never actually reflect what the piece looks like truly in person. And if some do have like a really glossy sheen on them, they'll look a little bit weird in that scan, but that scan is not used for judging, so it doesn't matter. So overall, I would recommend using varnish. It is absolutely not necessary though, and it's personal preference on what you prefer the finish to look like. And then you have to mat it. Now here's another fun issue to work out if you're not in the art world. Here's some examples of mat board, and by matted over, they mean that you have your image, you're going to put a mat over it to cut out exactly what's in there. So now I will have a section on how I cut my own mat boards, which is the more affordable route over time. If you don't want to do this, that's totally understandable. Here are some options. One, you go to like a Blick or Michael's or any art store near you that does framing, and they can easily cut a mat for you the right size, which is 7x10 and 12x9. You could show them this picture and they would know what to do. You can also order a custom mat on the internet. What's annoying is that this is not a standard size. It's just not. So they end up being more expensive than you want. Places like Blick sell pre-cut mats, but never at this size because it's a weird size. So I think I looked into that once just to be like, is that possible to just buy a pre-cut mat? Because I wasn't enjoying doing this, and it was like $30 $30 to $40 or something like that with shipping. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But that is an option. Another thing to consider, it takes time for that to arrive, / if you're getting a custom mat cut in person, sometimes that takes a few days to a week, or I don't know, just have to plan that out. If you want to cut your own mat, here's how you do it. You go to an art store, Blick, Hobby Lobby, unfortunately, they have this, and they have big sheets of mat board. They're like $12 for like huge sheet of mat board. Maybe your store has some smaller ones. You need to acquire mat board somehow at a store. And then I have this mat knife, which has a razor blade at the end. A box cutter or an X-Acto knife or anything like it would do the trick. And you cut out 9x12, the outside of it. Alright, I'm doing a voiceover old footage of me making a mat. So you start by cutting out the 9x12 mat board that you need from your bigger piece of mat board. I measure 9x12 on each side, and then I take my mat knife, make sure the blade is tight on there, and then I just hold down a ruler. The bigger the ruler, the better, and cut that out. This is what makes mat cutting strenuous. I might buy something better at some point, but to cut out the other side to get my 9x12 piece of mat board. Replace your blades too, that will help a ton. Now it's time for the inside cutout, which I use my bevel mat cutter. I bought this when I was first entering, and I was rushing this process because I'm a procrastinator and I needed to ship my painting really fast. There was no way that I could get a custom mat cut. I had not cut mats, so I was like, oh my god, I need a mat cutter and I need to do it myself. So I went out and bought this. I don't remember how much it was. It's irrelevant to me now for how much I've used it, but there are certainly other mat cutters at a variety of prices, but I like this one. It has worked well. On this, it has a tool to make measuring easier. Once you've determined how wide you want your mat to be for the duck stamp, it is 1 inch all around, 1 inch on every side. You simply set the ruler, built-in ruler, to be 1 inch, tighten up that little knob, and then there's a piece of graphite inside of it. Mine's kind of old, so the graphite's like barely there, but it has a piece of graphite. So then you line it up with the edge of your mat board, simply push down on the graphite and pull along. And those are the lines that we're gonna follow when cutting a mat board. Very handy. Do that on every side, so now you know what you're gonna cut out. This next step is the most important step, and it's the make it or break it moment. I've since used a much bigger ruler than this, and I recommend that. A heavy ruler. Heavy straight edge is easier to maneuver, but you make sure you're on the back of your mat board, put down the straight edge on the line, and then this back line is where you're going to start and stop. When that line matches the lines you made, these work by pushing the black handle so that the angled blade comes out, and you drag it across the mat board as you're pressing it. And again, the newer, the sharper the blade, the easier this process is. Oh, I got a different ruler. So then once you have one side cut, just make sure it went well. This one didn't. But I usually just clean up the edges a bit with an X-Acto knife at the end, and it's fine enough. To make sure you're doing it with the right angle, you're on the back of the mat board, and you should always be cutting the left edge of the mat board. So the hangover mat board is always to your right. So you repeat that step on every side. Be delicate with the corners where they meet, and then you got yourself a mat. That whole middle piece is just nothing, and you really just wanted this skinny little piece of white mat board. Perfect. Voila. And then the most satisfying moment ever is putting it on top of your painting for the first time. Beautiful. Yes. Really ties it together. Yes. Oh, and I did Kess's too. Kess, my twin sister. That was Puffcorn, and this is Pickaxe. And I cut her mats every year. You're welcome, Kess. They're not always perfect. That corner was definitely not, but alas. It's also something that I failed at many times. I'm good at it now, but this was a failed attempt, and it can kind of take some getting used to. I know it's annoying, but this is the most cost-effective way to do this. Fantastic. Good job, that was not fun, and it's really quite a small thing in the end that you need. It's literally an inch on every side. So once you have this skinny and important piece of white mat board, your next question is, oh, well, how should I affix it to my painting or drawing or whatever it is that you created? And I would say I've done a few ways, and even though I end up always keeping the original mat board on it, it's usually best to make it not permanent. So I would say a double-sided tape, and a lot of it works. Otherwise, you could do a small amount of glue, but I always do tape. I always just do tape and make sure and like test it, make sure it's pretty durable and it's gonna stay on there for the duration of the judging. But then you have your art done, and that's fantastic. And that is the main part of this whole thing. So congratulations. Now you gotta get it to where it'll be judged. Oh, I will mention on this page 2 with the diagram, they always have, which is really nice, a list for the next 2 years of the tentative eligible species, meaning this list can change, but it rarely does. So for the next 2 years, I can already see the species that they are planning to have available. They do this because for photographers and the people who are good at planning, I don't know, so you can plan to go and see them if you want, get photos, or just like thinking about the future. That's the list, and that's where you can find it. On to the next part, which is you have to pay for this. On the 3rd page of the rules is where they talk about it the most, I believe, but it's on a few of the pages. You have to pay $125 to enter this contest, which, as a 19-year-old going to college, that was near impossible to me. I could not afford it the first year. My wonderful mother paid that for me, and thank God, because look at my life now. I was like, just you wait, Mom, I'm gonna make this a career. Whatever. $125 is still a lot of money to most people, myself included, but it's worth it for this competition. It's also something that you could plan for if you can't afford to enter one year, save up for it, do some practice paintings, enter the next year. But you need to get either a cashier's check, a certified check, or a money order. And 19-year-old me had never heard of any of those, really. But you can't use a personal check. Why? Because personal checks can bounce if you don't have the money. All of the other options prove that you have already paid that money. You have already paid the $125, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will be receiving it no matter what. So here are the options. Cashier's check. To get that, you go to your bank. Wherever you bank, you go in there and you say, hi, I would like a cashier's check of $125 made out to, payable to, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And in my experience, I have literally written that down on a piece of paper and been like, I need $125 payable to them. Because usually they're like, to what? The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And they do their computer work, and you pay $125 plus like $10 or something stupid, $5-10, I don't really remember. You pay an additional sum of money to get that from them. A slightly cheaper option is a money order, which I believe you can get at your local post office, and I think Walmart. I will fact check later, but essentially the same thing. You go, hello, I would like a money order, $125 made out to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I think that's only like $3 or something like that additionally. But then it has your information, and it has the money that you were going to give to them. And they give you the check. And that check has to be with your painting when you mail it. That part was intimidating. Once you do it once, you got it. Just don't use a personal check or cash. I don't think you could do cash. All right. After that, we're going to the display and participation agreement. Something that you have to sign or you can be disqualified. So things of note on this page. 1, everyone gets their painting back. Wonderful thing about this competition, you mail it out, but you get it back and you retain the right to your image. That's a huge thing. There are lots of art competitions where if you submit and you win, the organization owns your image or even owns any image submitted to it. What I love about this competition is that the artist receives no monetary value for winning, but they retain the right to their image, which means that person can choose to sell prints or other merchandise in order to make a profit, and that money is only yours. Now, I don't fully know what happens when you win, but I know in the past, everyone kind of does the same thing of making the prints / you could be offered by like a publisher, like a deal is made. I don't know. That's for a different time, hopefully in my life. But that can get complicated on its own. But know that your image is your image legally. And when you win, you are giving the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service the right to use your image on the stamps that they make. They can also use it for like promotional things on their website or educational stuff. But you will get it back within 128 days. However, if you win / are one of the top 10 to 20 entries, the highest ranked entries, it'll be longer because those entries go on a little tour, which is fun. They go on an exhibition tour, which they have a link to on their website for the scheduling, but you can see the top entries from each year, which is really cool. And after that, they will be returned to you. Now, on this page, this is everything that you have to do if you are the winner, which is a lot of events. So the winning artist must agree to participate in the following events to help promote the federal duck stamp program. Some transportation and lodging will be paid for by the organizations indicated. If you win, you have to go to all of these events and probably speak at some of them. It's like you're booked and busy a little bit for a while, but that's fun and great. And you have to agree to it before the competition happens. They have a note in here too. Obviously, if something big life comes up, things can be accounted for. First, you must sign the Display, Participation, and Reproduction Rights Agreement. And this is the fine print that no one wants to read. But there are 13 notes on here. I'm going to summarize all of them. First one is that they have the right to display your painting. Any damage to it is not really their problem. Any damage or loss, you waive the claims to those. Number 2, specifies the time in which your painting will be returned to you. Number 3, if you win, your image will be copied, used for stamps, and there will be no compensation to you for that. They will not give you money for this. I'm not judging them. That's great. 4, this is the important one. Ownership of the original design may, at the option of the artist, be retained by him / her / them, and it may be copyrighted, copied, reproduced, published, or otherwise distributed by the artist. You retain the copyright to your image. You can choose to do with it what you want. But if you do make an agreement with someone, like a distribution company or something, another person or company, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service gets to know about it, because the next 3 points, 5, 6, and 7, all say that if you make prints of this, they get some at no cost to them. They get 25 prints of yours. If you make mini prints, decoys, or postcards, they get 10 of each of those. And if you make posters, you are obligated to give the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service 200 posters at no cost, which is funny. I don't know. That's just what happens. Keep in mind, this competition used to make the winner a millionaire, like multiple millions of dollars. That is not true anymore. Don't go in with that expectation, but certainly the winner is able to make a decent profit still. That is why it's not totally absurd that you just have to give them products that you make. Number 9 is stating that yes, this is your original handmade artwork and you did not copy it from someone else or anything on the internet. Also, I don't think I said photography is not allowed and AI imagery is not allowed. It does not say that you can't use AI as a reference, but any computer generated art is not allowed to be the finished product of the work. 10, they can change your image. There's something about your image that is not totally working, but at 1, you can work that out to make it great. They will also be adding text on top of your image for the stamp. 11, if you work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and stuff, you can't be a part of this. Number 12, you're gonna have to sign stuff for them. They want your signature. Number 13, the last one, the information that you're giving to them is only used by them. great. Obviously read all that if you're very serious about the duck stamp, but that's the gist. Now you sign it. You have to sign all where an asterisk is. You do your street, city, telephone number, the date, and the species. You must sign this and you must ship it to them with your entry. Before you do that, you cut on the dotted line on this page. This part, you have to fill out again all of that information plus more information. This part at the bottom is what's gonna go on the back of your entry. That's the only way that they keep whose painting is whose straight. And they do it on the back because no one besides the person who opens the packages, Jen, shout out, will see that because this is an anonymous competition, as anonymous as possible. So you cut that out and just tape it pretty securely to the back of your physical painting. All right, we're almost done. Can you believe it? Now you've gone through this whole set of rules. You understand what's happening. So here are some key points. Suggestions for the design. Use bright, bold, pleasing, warm colors. Does not mean that the painting must be warm. There are certainly cool paintings that have one. Just like vibrant colors. But portray an eligible species alive and as the dominant main focus of your entry. Keep the design simple. It has to be really small. And leave some room knowing that there will be a species name, a $25 sign, as well as when the stamps are valid and when they're void. That information will be on the stamp. So leaving some breathing room around the edges of your design is smart. Finally, remember that the first impression a judge has on your entry is a lasting one. Good luck. The judges do get to see your physical painting, which is fantastic. And they have a cute little checklist at the end, just to make sure. It's honestly stressful every year. It's 3 things, but you gotta remember them all. Did you affix the entry form to the back of your entry? Yes. Did you sign that display participation and reproduction rights agreement? Yes. And did you go and get a check that is not a personal check for $125? Yes. You did all of those things. Good job. Now it's time to package this. I've had some issues with time management and procrastination. Be better than me. Please allow adequate time for your painting to dry before you ship it. And when you ship it, package it well. So, some options for shipping. There are priority mailboxes that you can pick up at USPS, or you can get any other box that will fit it, but you want to cover your painting with something that will protect it. Acetate, I think is what it's called. It's good for paintings. Cover it with some cardboard, something to protect it. Then wrap that up. Bubble wrap, make it cushy, make it sturdy. Do a good job wrapping it so that your painting isn't damaged on the way there. And then you could put it in a box. And then you write on said box their really long address. Write that on the box if you are going to take it to the post office to ship it. I purchase labels online, but I also usually just go to the post office for my duck stamp because postmark date matters. You must ship your entry by August 15. Postmarked by August 15. Unfortunately, there's been a change to the USPS about postmarks this year, so this is something to consider. And please know, before this year, you would take your piece of mail to the post office, and the day that you bring it there, that is the postmark day. The day that someone first scans it, that is the day that it is postmarked. So often for this specific competition, people would wait. You don't have to do this, but a lot of people do this. Wait until the last day to bring it to the post office to postmark it and ship it. Now, that is not a guarantee. The day that you bring it to the post office does not mean that is the date that it was postmarked. The day that you bought the label. The day that it is postmarked is when it gets into the distribution system. So say you bring it in on Friday, it might not get scanned into the system until Monday. And so Monday is its postmark date, not Friday. Obviously, this sucks for lots of different reasons. Voting, it's gonna be harder. Healthcare things that require a specific date, you're not here for this information, but it sucks. It also affects the duck stamp. So be mindful of this and submit earlier with enough time to know that your entry is postmarked by the right day. I believe you can ask for it to be postmarked immediately, but I don't know. This is new to me as well. So just be mindful of that though. It is all right. It will be okay. So shoot for not mid-August. August. Shoot for early August or any time before that. You can start submitting as early as June 1st. Shoot for anywhere. Not stressful. But once you ship it, the order that they open the packages at the place, what is it? Jesus Christ. The duck stamp office is the order that they will be displayed in and judged in. That is why people care about what day they ship it. If you are the first one to ship it, you're the first one being judged. If you're the last one being judged. Is there a better place to be? Kind of. Usually people think they want to be in the middle to end. I no longer want that. I want to be in the first round of judging because sometimes it feels like they change opinions after they have a lunch break. All of that is pretty arbitrary and pointless. There are new judges each year. Cannot predict what they will like. However, you can generally predict that this competition likes realism. It inherently does. People can be upset about that, but that's just what this competition is. It is painting realistic ducks. You can certainly enter a non-realistic duck. Some of them are my favorite entries in the whole thing, and you can find your people that way. It could be a fun activity, a fun challenge with a specific set of goals, which is kind of fun. Good way to practice art, and ultimately good for the program. There used to be over 1,000 entries. Now, how many were last year? About 300, which is more than when I first started entering, and that's great. But do know that this competition favorites realism for sure, and it does have a kind of old style. I don't paint in this style, but I love this contest, and I love painting ducks, so it's what I do. But also, before you ship your painting, they strongly encourage that you insure your painting. Another fun thing to learn if you have not shipped artwork before. Depending on who you are, I would highly recommend insuring your artwork. To do that, while you are at the post office, they will ask you insurance value. You tell them the value that you want to insure it for. Say I want to insure my painting for $1,000. I have done that. Really, I would sell my finished work for more than that, but it's up to you how much you want to insure it for. And by insuring it, it means that if it gets damaged or lost, you can file a claim and they can pay you the amount that you insured it for. I insure my painting for $500. If they lost it, I would be like, hey, you lost it. And they'll be like, I'm so sorry, here's $500 that you insured it for. But it costs money to insure it. Not a ton of money, not $500, but some more money. So normal mail, priority first class mail, I believe, has an insurance value of $100 automatically. If you want to insure it for more than $100, you tell the person you're buying your label from the value that you are attributing to it, and they will charge you more money for that. It's probably like $10 to $15 for like insuring it, $300 to $500. It's not like a ton of money. It's definitely worth it. Do a little bit of research. As someone who ships a lot of artwork, yes, please insure things that have value and wrap them well. Okay, now you've done it, you've shipped it, you made the artwork, you followed all the rules, so all of that went successful. Oh my god, congratulations. That's so good. What's gonna happen is they're gonna open it, they're gonna put a number on the front of it with some protective thing around it, put a number on that. That is your number. That is the order that you will be judged in. They will take a low quality, specifically low quality scan of every painting. They do this for protection purposes. They don't want high quality images of everyone's art on the internet. It makes sense. I know that kind of sucks for online viewers, but they're not horrible. But they're gonna scan your work and they're gonna make a Flickr gallery, and everyone's going to be in the order that the number that they got and the way that they will be judged. And then come competition time. They actually already have the dates for this year's competition, which will be in Memphis, Tennessee, September 24th and 25th. I think I just remembered that. Let's check if I'm right. Yes, September 24th and 25th at Ducks Unlimited headquarters at 1 Waterfowl Way, Memphis, Tennessee. There'll be 2 days of judging and 3 rounds of judging. Here's a brief overview of how judging works. You can read more about it on page 4, I believe, of the rules. Each judge, new each year, they are qualified in either biology of birds, stamps, or they have an art background. They get a variety of people, which is nice, that all have different specialties to kind of even out the categories. First round of judging will take place on day 1. They will judge every one of them at like 10 o'clock in the morning, depending on where you live. First round will have no scores. Each judge will have an in or an out. It's kind of brutal, but they're going to say, is your painting in or is it out? This is going to knock out a lot of the competition. So you've done all this, you've paid the $125, you could possibly be told no day one right away. That happens to most people, especially if it's their first time entering. Do not sweat it. It's just part of the game. If you receive the majority, which means 3 or more in votes, you get to go on to the next round, which will be the next day of judging. At the end of that though, each judge does have the option to hand select any entry that was voted out to move on anyway. They would do this if they felt one got overlooked somehow and they really like it and they want it to continue. Usually you won't be winning in that case, but you'll get a score, which is really exciting. They can pull back up to 5 each, so that could be a lot. Sometimes it's only a few and sometimes it's like an absurd amount. Okay, whatever. Just because you can, why not? Makes the second day longer, but that's all. So congratulations whoever made it to the second round. The second round is now scoring, numerical scoring. Each judge has a card of 1 to 5. So everyone gives it a 5. The highest score you can get is 25. They go through the remaining entries and everyone gets a score. The top scores are usually 18 to 25. Not a lot of entries get 25. And if you get a 25, does not guarantee you're going to win by any means. And if you get lower than that, does not guarantee that you won't win. A lot of judges change their mind at some point. Just happens. Judging almost never goes how I expect it to. Do not take it personally. How they determine who gets to the third and final round, they take the top 5 scores. This is not a preset of numbers. It is out of all the entries being judged, which score was the top 5. So it could be 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. If there was nothing bigger than that, anyone with any one of those scores will move on. 10 people got a score of 18. All 10 of those people are moving on to the third round. Say it's 25, 24, 23, 22, and 21. Anyone 20 and lower are out. So top 5 scores, anyone with them moves on to the third round. So you could have as few as 5 entries, or you could have a ton. But all of those will be judged numerically again, except for this time, the judges only have a score of 3 to 5. Means they cannot give an entry a 1 or a 2. This forces them to have, I don't honestly know. That's just how it is. So now they see every painting that they judge again every time it's held in front of them and they hold up a score. This will determine the top 3 placements, which are the only 3 placements that they recognize. If there is a tie, which happens a lot for any placement, they will do a tiebreaker and they will just continue to judge that work with the same criteria and someone will change their mind and it'll be sorted. But sometimes that can go on a few rounds and it gets kind of ridiculous. But then in the end, you have a first place, a second place, and a third place. And everyone wants to be the first place. And then that one becomes the stamp. And you have to go to all those things you agreed to go to. You can watch it in person or online. Last year, they did a online public fan favorite voting thing. That was the first year they had ever done that. I believe they're going to continue to do that. I am not sure. I won that. Very humbled. Thank you so much to anyone who voted for me, and I got a t-shirt from them, from their archive, which is really cute and really fun. So that could be of more interest. You could try to win the fan painting. But then after that, the top 20-ish paintings score-wise will go on a tour, and then you get your painting back. And on the day of the competition, the last day I think, they announced the eligible species for the next year, which are almost always the same list as the tentative species found in the rules. But if they make it official and they say which species are eligible for the next year, so you can already move on to that one. And if you know any children who would like to enter or are a child, I don't know who I'm talking to, there's a junior competition which works differently. Each state has their own competition and then the winner of the states goes on to the national junior duck stamp competition and does result in a winning stamp that is sold for $5, the profits of which are only for funding the program and in teaching kids about conservation and educating about the environment, which is fantastic. Love the Junior Duck Stamp. I have a link to more information about that in the same place as all my other links. Otherwise, you can search Junior Duck Stamp and find it on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I personally have never done it, so I'm much less informed on how that one works, but I know that schools sometimes do it. There are a few more requirements to follow regarding the images that you use, but it is easy enough as children enter. I hope I answered every question that you could possibly have about this, but if I did not, feel free to ask me and I will reply in the comments. Once you do it once, it's pretty easy going. I know it's a lot to get over the first time, but it is a lot of fun and I hope you enter it. But I love the duck stamp. I hope you love the duck stamp. I hope this helped you. Let me know if you're gonna enter, and thank you so much for watching this.